Okay, and we are recording now. So again, we want to thank all of you for joining us today. Today's presentation will kind of be in a two-segment part. The first will be a presentation by myself, and then we'll have an open question and answer discussion, a chat afterwards that my student assistant, Sierra, go ahead, Sierra, wave your hand. She'll help us to moderate. So if you have any questions, feel free to put that in the chat tonight, and Sierra will be able to categorize them, answer some in the chat, as well as then kind of answer or ask some of those questions at the end of the presentation. So today we'll be talking about balanced eating in general, related to how you do that in the dining halls, how do you create meals that are balanced and good for you, as well as talking about meal satisfaction. Like I said, my name is Callan Anderson. I'm the registered dietitian with ISU Dining. You can find me on Instagram at ISU Dining RD. I'm really happy that you're here to join me. I love doing outreach, educational presentations to you all and meeting with students. And some of the reason for this presentation is just to answer some of the common questions that I get from students. And so having some of these presentations, these chats, these webinars is just an easy way for me to be able to reach more of you with answers to some of the most common questions that you have for me. Okay, so today, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, we'll be talking about balanced eating, how you can do that and create balanced meals while navigating the dining centers on campus, as well as food and meal satisfaction and why that even matters. To start off, I like to talk a little bit about my food philosophies and what kind of builds the foundation as my role as the dietitian within ISU Dining for all of you students. So first off, all foods fit. I firmly believe that all foods fit in a balanced diet within for every single person. We know that some people have different medical conditions or diagnoses that make it so they're a little bit more particular about what foods or how much of foods need to be in their balanced diet to help manage that condition. But in general, all foods fit for everyone. I also believe that health is cumulative and that the individual behaviors that college students start off right now, your first couple of years of college, become the foundation of health habits that you have later on in life. And so that's one reason why I take my role as the dietitian with ISU Dining pretty heavily, because I'm the one who's helping you or helping to guide you develop some of these healthy behaviors that become habits later on. And that's one reason why this presentation is really important as well. I also believe that food is meant to be enjoyed. If we're not enjoying the food that we're eating, if we're not satisfied from it, then there's something else going on there. And so that will be another topic that we'll talk about later on in this presentation underneath that food and meal satisfaction area. Okay, so balanced eating. What does that even mean? Why not healthy? The reason why I don't really use the term healthy to describe eating patterns is because health looks different for everyone, right? We would never ever tell someone with a peanut allergy or a tree nut allergy to have peanuts or tree nuts simply because they're a great protein source and they're a great snack to have. That's not healthy for them. Everyone, depending on their genetics, their body, their needs, there's so many different factors that go in to determining what food is healthy for an individual. And so the best way to describe food and eating for me is by using the term balanced. And what I kind of mean by balanced in terms of meals and snacks focuses around the food groups. I go old school. It makes it so much easier for you all to understand and make nutrition and make food easier for you to make sure that you're eating in a balanced way. And so meals, we want to try and have about 3 to 5 food groups per meal. And for snacks, about 2 food groups. The reason for this is there's a lot of research showing that the more types of foods that we include, the more variety of foods that we include in our meals and snacks, the more satisfaction and satiety we get. This food variety can include food group, colors of food on your plate, textures of food, different temperatures, different tastes of food. All of that makes that eating experience more enjoyable, but then also leads to greater satisfaction and satiety. And what I mean by satiety is in terms of you eating lunch and then an hour and a half later in your next class, your stomach grumbling and everyone looking at you, because that's kind of awkward, right? If anyone has been in that similar role, we know that we automatically think, oh, I just ate. What on earth is going on? Why am I hungry again? Because maybe you didn't have that variety or you didn't have enough food in there to really satisfy that fullness and to really bring about that feeling and actually being fully satisfied with your meal. And so the best way to do that is by increasing that food variety on your plate during your meals and snacks. And food groups is the easiest way to do that. Again, bring it old school. Food groups, maybe you recognize it from the My Plate, maybe you remember it from the My Pyramid, regardless of what shape any of those are. The reason why we use food groups is just to make it easier for all of you. Again, it's about thinking about that food variety. The way that food groups are kind of lined up is they're grouped in the categories of foods that share the same kind of groupings of different nutrients that are in the food. And so we don't have to worry or be anxious about needing to get every single vitamin or every single mineral or all of those different nutrients, because that can be a lot of time and energy thinking about all of that. That's a lot of mental energy, whereas you all are in college and you're busy and you have classes and social life and figuring out all of these other things. And so the easier way to think about that, instead of all of those nitpicky little numbers, is by thinking of the food groups, that food variety. That makes it a little bit easier for you all to recognize that that food and nutrition doesn't have to be challenging, because there's enough going on in life that is already challenging, and food should not be one of them. When I also talk about food groups, this is what I mean. We eat food. We don't eat nutrients. Nutrients is in our food, and maybe we hear more about that because food labels are becoming so much more prominent, and some people really do need to know the nutrients or nutrition information or ingredients, again, to manage a certain health condition. And that's why we have food labels. That's why we have labels out in the dining halls. However, for the majority of us, we don't need to be as preoccupied with that. We can just focus on the food. We don't need to focus as much on those nutrients, because when it all comes back to it, again, we eat the food specifically, and so let's make that food enjoyable for us. Okay, so how do we take all of this discussion about food variety and food groups and actually use it how you all use it, using your meal plan on campus in our dining centers? So let's piece that together. I'm sure in all of our dining centers, you've maybe seen some of these signs, right? Maybe it's a little confusing. Maybe you've noticed our or used our food labels in every single dining hall, showing which food item is out on display for you all. It can be a little bit confusing, but these are here to help you. This is here for students who have different dietary preferences or different food allergy or special dietary needs, to know and kind of understand what ISU dining, what we do to help you all. It's the same thing with the individual food labels there too. If you are a person who does have a food allergy or does want to just know more about the food item or the recipe that you're eating, make sure that you do look at that food label, scan the QR code if you want more information, because that entire nutrition and ingredient facts label will also show up. And if you have any questions about these, feel free to ask, email me, or you can also ask one of our cooks or staff members in any of our dining centers. So when we navigate the dining halls, all of them are a little bit different. And they all have different specialties for the meals and the menus that they have. They all look a little bit different as well, and they all have different venues. And so sometimes if it's a little bit overwhelming, or if you haven't figured out which dining center is your favorite, be sure to check our website, dining.iastate.edu. On our website, click on the Hours and Menus tab, and we have all of the menus there from all of the different dining locations across campus. On these different tabs, you can click any of the locations, exchange for different days, for different meal times, and then see the menus that are up there as well. All of these menus is where you can also find additional nutrition and ingredient information too. When going into the dining center, kind of have a plan. That's where, if you're not exactly sure what you want to eat, look on the website first. Get an idea. Are they having a taco bar at Friendly Windows, or are they having a burger, build your own burger over at Seasons? Kind of depending on what it is, you can see and you can gauge where you might want to go eat for your next meal or snack. Then going into the dining center, kind of with a plan. Maybe you get there and originally you're like, yes, tacos, that is what I am here for, loving it. But then you get there and maybe there's a really long line and you've only got 20 minutes before your next class. Or maybe you get there and something else catches your eye. That's okay. Adjust with that plan. Things change once you actually get into the location. If you're not exactly sure what you want, or you just went to your favorite place with your friends, walk around the venues, ask questions, look what's out there, what sounds good to you, what smells good to you. All of these different senses also go impact our way of having an enjoyable eating and dining experience. So when you're actually picking out food, again, thinking back to before, what does a balanced meal mean? That variety in food groups. So when you're navigating the dining halls, keep that in mind. Okay, how can I get different food groups in different meals or in different food items? A lot of different recipes or food items may be what we call combination meals. So it may be lasagna that has some great grains in there. There's some great vegetables with the tomatoes and tomato sauce, a protein choice, maybe some dairy with some cheese on there as well. That's awesome. That's great. Kind of taking that with a grain of salt and navigating around, figuring out what you want to eat, what are combination meals, and what you're able to actually do to build in that balanced diet. And so I also want you to think about, what do you like to have? No one eats the same, and that's okay. We're all different. We're all our own individuals. And so I want you to reflect the next time that you go eat. Why do you choose what you want to eat? How do you choose it? What's your eating style? Are you more of a 3-meal-a-day kind of a person, or do you like to have multiple smaller meals and snacks throughout your day? Any of them is okay. Some people, it might work better depending on your class schedule or how busy you are, or if you are prone to getting really hungry afterwards and needing more food. That's all right. It's all individual, and it's all your body telling you, hey, I need some more fuel. I need some more energy for you to get through your day. Here are a couple of my own balance plates that I've made for my lunches in the dining centers. If you don't follow me on Instagram, please do, ISU Dining RD. My goal is really to make sure that there's a visual of what a balanced meal actually looks like for you all. And these are some of my actual lunches that I've had. You can kind of see from the plates here that there's a couple from Friendly Windows and some from the Union Drive Marketplace as well. The reason for this, I don't get over to the eastern side of campus or down to Storms very often, simply because my office is on the western side of campus. So that's how come the majority of my pictures come from those locations. But look at these pictures. As you're looking at them, you can see I have some pasta, I've got some tacos, I've got some other days with burgers and French fries. Again, going back to my #1 philosophy is all foods fit in a balanced diet. It's being able to expand that food variety, being able to understand that that all food does give us nourishment. And so being able to see these pictures or following along and seeing other ones that are on Instagram, again, think to yourself, how can I include all of this different food variety in food group, color, texture, temperature, and taste? And that leads me on to satisfaction. Meal and food satisfaction means more than just feeling full. And that can be a little confusing sometimes. And so this is how come we're going to break it down. Sometimes we live in a world where there are so many food rules. Eat this, not that. But instead of thinking it as in like food rules, let's think of it as in like food rules, because food tastes so good. Let's work on that together. So when we're thinking about how to make it so that food rules and that we really, really enjoy it, let's think of it as in the satisfaction factor. For any of you that have heard of intuitive eating or read in the intuitive eating book, you may recognize that the satisfaction factor is the sixth principle of intuitive eating. This basically means that food is meant to taste good. Food is meant to be enjoyed. Biologically, physiologically, we need food to taste good so that we have an incentive to eat it, because we need food. We need that nourishment. We need that energy. We need these nutrients to keep our bodies doing every single thing that bodies do every single day, from keeping our brain going when we're in class so that we can actually learn when we're in college, to keeping our heart beating, our lungs breathing, and creating all of these different hormones and enzymes that we have going through our body to do all of the bodily functions that we have. Food is meant to taste good for a reason. And so we're meant to enjoy it. Even way back when, different ancient civilizations, their primary goal, oftentimes for eating and for mealtime, was to have as much pleasure as possible. Very common with ancient Japanese cultures as well as the ancient Romans, bringing as much pleasure as possible into the eating experience, because it enhances nutrition so much more. And we're able to increase that pleasure, increase that satisfaction, and create that variety of food that we have. This also kind of brings back to, what does fullness mean and how does that differ from being satisfied? Fullness is that actual feeling, that physiological feeling that we get from our stomach being full or feeling fulfilled after a meal. That's important. That's a normal bodily function that is so important for us. We have two hormones in our body that help us to recognize whether we're hungry and then when we get full. Leptin is the hunger hormone and ghrelin is the fullness hormone. So we are supposed to feel fullness, to feel fulfilled in terms of nourishment. Satisfaction is when we feel truly satisfied from that meal as well. Sometimes it can be confusing to understand the difference, or what even is it? Am I eating enough? And so this can be a nice way to kind of think of it. Do you feel physically full from your meal? No? Okay, keep eating. Yes? Do you feel satisfied from it? Do you feel, that was a great meal. That was a great snack. That was a great dessert. That was a great anything. Do you feel really satisfied from it? Yes? Awesome. Move on. Go on with your next thing in your day. No? Maybe you ate enough, but it's not really what you wanted. You have full permission to still eat what you want, to still get that satisfaction. Because again, satisfaction and satiety go hand in hand. And we want to make sure that when eating balanced, we're also feeling satisfied and enjoying what we're eating. I mentioned intuitive eating a little bit when talking about feeling satisfied. And so just a little bit of more detail on that is that intuitive eating is a non-diet eating framework that includes a body's physiological instinct, our emotions, as well as rational thought when it comes to food. There are 10 principles of intuitive eating, of which finding the satisfaction is one of them. You can learn more about intuitive eating by joining the Joyful Eating online self-guided course through Student Wellness. Kind of summarize everything up. This is a quote from Ellen Satter, who was a registered dietitian who really kind of pioneered a little bit about the information related to competent eating, which led to intuitive eating. And so she is reported as saying regularly that when the joy goes out of eating, nutrition suffers. Again, when it comes to finding and creating balanced meals, we want not only the food groups, not only the nutrition, but also the enjoyment to actually feel really satisfied with everything that we're eating. I want to thank you all for joining me today. And right now, we'll open it up a little bit for if there's any questions in the chat box for Sierra to discuss a little bit.
So I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, yay. Oh, that's my echo. So I'm not seeing any questions right now in the chat, but feel free to like unmute yourself and speak up if you have one, or just leave it in the chat box below. But I do have a question for Callan if you want to answer something. Okay, so you did mention like variety being a way to like add satisfaction into a meal. So what would be some other tips that you would have for students who are trying to navigate that and wanting to have more satisfaction in their meals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, food variety and satisfaction in terms of meals. Sometimes we also get more satisfaction from more flavor in our meals as well. And so, food variety is the best way. Food groups, variety of colors, of textures, of temperatures of food also make it more enjoyable for the eating experience. We want different textures and tastes of food, and that's why we have different taste buds on our tongue. Right? We have those taste buds there for a reason. We have all of these different abilities to smell the different food for a reason. And so having as much variety there can really bring extra satisfaction. Sometimes if maybe you're not feeling fully satisfied from something that you really want to, you definitely can add a little bit more seasoning to it. Some salt, some pepper, maybe an extra sauce. Go back up to the line and maybe ask just for a little bit of the dressing that was coating the chicken. Today, for instance, I had chicken tikka masala over at Friley Windows and some rice. Maybe if it wasn't quite there, ask just for a little bit of the extra sauce or the dressing or the marinade that any of the foods were in. That can also definitely help. Same thing with like a stir fry, adding some extra sriracha sauce or soy sauce or something else there can definitely enhance the flavor of the food, making it a little bit more enjoyable.
Okay, so next question. You did kind of mention about like your philosophy and your views on food and nutrition. So how do you think nutrition fits into balanced eating and meal satisfaction? And how much like focus on nutrition do you think is too much versus not enough?
That's a really great question. So kind of what I mentioned is that nutrition, the actual nutrition information, the nutritionals, the amounts of vitamins and minerals, ingredients, all of that, they definitely have a place. For someone who is managing a certain medical condition or diagnosis, they can sometimes be really, really important for managing that. And so being able to balance that with the satisfaction and with the balancing and the food variety of creating meals as well. Sometimes it can go a little bit too much, where maybe we're checking the ingredient information or the nutrition information too much. I mean, it becomes a little bit obsessive sometimes, or we aren't allowed to like eat something unless we check that. And that can be a little bit more in that line of disordered eating habits. And so if you are someone who feels like there are too many food rules instead of being able to let food rock and taste good and to be in that food rules type of a section, that's where I encourage you to self-reflect a little bit and kind of recognize where you are on this spectrum between food rules and food rules. Okay, because the more that we follow any of these specific and maybe more controlling food rules, that more leans to disordered eating habits or an unhealthy relationship with food and body. If you are also struggling with any of those kind of topics in my philosophy in terms of all foods fit and allowing yourself to eat all of the different foods and not restricting any of them, that also kind of aligns in that disordered eating or eating disorders segment. If you are struggling with that, feel free to reach out to me. You can also reach out to other great partners that we have on campus, including student health and student counseling. There, we all work together. I myself, as well as other providers on campus, including the dietitian within student wellness. We work with students one-on-one to kind of work through maybe some of these challenges that an individual might have when it comes to recognizing that that they are governed too much by food rules or being too particular or only eating food if they match up with a certain very strict criteria for the nutrition information or for the ingredients.
So you actually kind of answered the next question. It was how would someone break away from food rules? So you can elaborate a little bit more on that if you want. Otherwise, we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, I can definitely elaborate on that. So when it comes to those food rules, it can be hard. It can be really hard. We live in what is sometimes called a diet culture around us. Our world telling us to eat this and not that, and look this way and not this way. And that basically kind of it gives food a moral value, which isn't accurate at all. We are all perfect just the way that we are. And also food, again, it's meant to taste good. And so if we get into this realm of giving food that choice of whether we eat it, we're good, or if we eat it, then we're bad. That way, or if that happens, that can be a little bit too much. Breaking away from those food rules can be really, really difficult. And that's why sometimes it's helpful to talk with a professional. Reach out to a dietitian, myself included, a therapist or a counselor, like the ones at student counseling can also be really great, as well as there are several providers at student health who are also trained in disordered eating issues as well.
Okay, so the last question that we have is the joyful eating course. How would someone go about enrolling in that course?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a collaboration led by the student wellness dietitian. I assisted with some of the organization and reviewing the material for these courses. We have quite a few other ones as well. So to find more information on those courses, go to the student wellness website. Underneath programs and services, hover over that, and then a long list will pop down, and go down and scroll down to the joyful eating or nutrition services, and then click on online programs. We have that joyful eating course, which kind of walks through the 10 principles of intuitive eating, but then we also have several other courses and are still working on some more as well to add to that information so that you all have the most up-to-date information and can engage in different ways on your own pace. They're all self-guided courses on Canvas so that you are able to learn some of these important information at your own pace. And then if you have any other questions or concerns related to something that you've learned in that course, you can always reach out to one of the dietitians on campus.
I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, but we can wait around a little bit if we want to wait for more.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us today. Again, thank you for taking your time. Be sure to follow me at ISU Dining RD on Instagram to be in the know with different things that we're doing here at ISU Dining. And if you don't follow the regular ISU Dining Instagram account, please do that. They have all sorts of awesome events and contests and things like that that they do on there as well. We do plan on having another session of the nutritional download in both March as well as April. So be sure to be on the lookout for the dates and the times for those events. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a great rest of your evening.